Hi everybody, it's been a while since I've been on my channel. So when my experience with domestic violence became a little bit more publicly known, I had a lot of people reach out to me and ask me to share my experience and to give advice, but at the time I just felt that I didn't have the bandwidth to do so, and truthfully I still kind of feel that way. I really don't know how to go about this, but I was sitting there telling myself, you know what, like, just start, like, fuck it. Fuck it, just start and just see how it goes. You know, there's no perfect way of doing it. The goal for me is so that people can avoid any kind of violence, men or women, in any capacity, in any relationship, you know to know what to look for in these situations, just so that you can avoid it. I do also want to touch on the legal aspect of things too, because that within itself is such a draining and honestly seemingly defeating process, just on its own. So I may make this into maybe like a two-part series depending on how long this video is, but once I put it out, like, I just want to be done. After I share this, I just want to try and move forward in the best way that I can. This experience is unfortunately going to affect me, my body, my mental, my emotions for the rest of my life, right? But I am aching for a sense of normalcy in my life now. There was just so much to the woman that I was before experiencing this. There's so much more to me and who I am now and who I'm growing to be now that I'm a new mother and like trying to navigate my way through the trauma and like the CPTSD. I just want to put a disclaimer out there that you will probably get very frustrated with me in this story. You might think I'm dumb as hell, and you know, that's okay. I really can't put into words where my mental, my emotions, everything was at to have been able to tolerate the disrespect and the abuse that I did. But you know, it is what it is. It happened and now we're here. So let's begin. In May of 2024, I applied for my restraining order, and there were 5 notable experiences of violence that I noted in my restraining order, all that happened to me when I was pregnant. But I really want to start by getting into how the relationship started, what it was like, and the things that I chose to ignore, the red flags that I chose to ignore because of my naive tendency to look for the best in people. I call this the love bombing phase. This person was very sweet, very intentional when we first started to talk to each other, get to know each other, and starting to date. Intentional was a very, very important word to me. I just feel like that's the best way to describe it. Every decision that he made was just intentional. Like, he was thoughtful, he was considerate, he was communicative, he was all of the things. This was red flag number 1. He had flown out to Miami to see me, and my family was in town prior to him getting there, during him getting there, and a little bit after him being there. While he was in town for those few days, I would come and see him. I'd usually get there by like 9 a.m. and then I'd be driving home in the evening time. So we'd spend all day together and then I'd go home at the end of the day. There was a particular night, I believe it was the very last night that he was in Miami, and a couple of his friends had flew in town, and we all went to dinner at Komodo. So we all ate. I brought my best friend and we partied upstairs. After we left the club at the top of the Komodo restaurant, he was like walking ahead of me, like speed walking ahead of me, and I'm so drunk. It was so noticeable that his friends started to walk with me because he was just leaving me. Like, you could clearly tell that he was upset, and I was just very confused by it. But his friends walked with me to the Uber to make sure that I got to the Uber safely, and then I went home. It wasn't until I got home that I received what I thought was a pretty disrespectful voice note from him, where he was like, you know what, like, this ain't gonna work for me. Like, we can just be friends, because he's been in Miami for X amount of days and I never stayed at his hotel while he was in town. I responded by letting him know, like, I don't do stuff like that. You know, we're just meeting each other for the very first time. And also, I did think that it was pretty ungrateful, considering that I hardly see my family since I had moved to Miami and they were in town. I'm very family oriented, and so, you know, I was spending all hours of the day with him while he was there when I could have been hanging out with my family. I explained that nicely to him on the voice note, and I told him, cool, like I just let it go. I wasn't even really tripping on it too bad. So a few days had passed by and he reached out to me basically telling me that he didn't mean anything that he said in the voice note and that he really didn't just want to be friends. I was talking on the phone with my friends and I was just kind of like, I don't know what to do. Like, do you think it's a big deal? Because I was literally telling them verbatim. I said, you know, if this is a red flag and I'm ignoring it, I really, really hope that I don't regret it. And I ended up forgiving him and we just kind of moved forward from there. So the first few months of our relationship moved incredibly fast. He was the first and only person to ever meet my family, which he knew was a really huge deal to me. And he insisted on meeting them right away. Even though he knew that I'm someone who's uncomfortable with taking gifts, he was constantly buying me gifts. So purses, clothes, jewelry, whatever you can think of. He would go through my Twitter likes and say I liked something on Twitter, like a cute purse or something. He'd get it for me. And at the time I used to think it was cute until I started to realize that he was actually studying me. Even though I was uncomfortable with receiving gifts, he really encouraged me to just take them despite how uncomfortable I was. But I was always grateful, you know, for any gesture. It was just a very uncomfortable thing for me. I had to move you guys because the light was heating up my camera, so we're at a different angle. I call this the devaluation phase. I want to say that it was about 3 to 4 months into our relationship. He started to get very mean, if that makes sense. So it first started with little subtle things that I didn't really notice or pay attention to. The first 10 or 15 minutes of my dad having a conversation with him in person the first time we met, my dad did tell me, he was like, he has a temper. He clocked that immediately. But what it was that my family and friends had noticed that I hadn't yet caught on to were the little shady comments he would tell me, or like he would always try to humble me. It was very subtle and easy to miss. But even thinking back now, it's just crazy to me how my friends and family, though, it wasn't subtle to them. Like, they noticed right away. Normally when he would say these comments, like shady comments or try to humble me, it was almost always in front of other people. He did it in private too. And this was my first time ever experiencing anything like this. He used to tell me when I finally started being like, why do you always do that? Oh, you know, I'm just a competitive person. There was one notable time that I can give an example of that people will probably know what I'm talking about. But it was my very first time cooking for him. I'm not a big pasta eater, but he loved pasta. And so I decided to make pasta from scratch. I decided to make pasta from scratch. So I'm on the phone with my cousin trying to make this TikTok pasta recipe. And he comes in and he tries it. He's like, this food is fucking disgusting. Now I'm gonna have to eat, I'm gonna have to order us food to eat in. And I felt hella bad because it was late. I think it was like maybe 7 or 8 o'clock. And, you know, I'm like, damn. Like, I essentially just wasted ingredients. I wasted food, you know, if he doesn't like it. And now we have to order in, which will probably take another hour for us to eat. So I was feeling really bad, but he was really just like laying it in on me. So right after he's doing this, I'm still on the phone with my cousin, by the way. Right after he's doing this, he brings his camera out for his YouTube videos, and I'm literally begging him not to do this. He recorded himself trying the pasta again, saying how gross it was, saying that I couldn't cook, etc. And I'm begging him, like, after he finished recording, I'm like, please don't post that. He ended up posting it anyway. So then people were on the internet like, you know, Taja can't cook, this, that, and the third. And it seems like a harmless joke, but people didn't know that I was being verbally abused and like battered prior to him making that. I want to emphasize, I'm telling the story from the beginning because I want to show you guys how the subtle things started to grow bigger and how the relationship progressed in a way that became very, very toxic and abusive. There were many instances when he got mad that he would use the things that I cared about against me in arguments. So a really good example is how I used to always talk about how much I love my community and just how grateful for like how loved I am by my community, and vice versa, how much I love them. And just like, it's something that I'm very, very, very passionate and just grateful for. And that's something that I often express. So whenever he would get mad, he would be like, oh, then go be with, how about you go be with your fucking family then? Let your fucking family love you, miss. I'm so loved. I'm so loved. Like, shut the fuck up. When I developed PCOS, because I developed cysts on my ovaries from the constant stress that I was dealing with in that relationship, I felt horrible because it was making me so tired and like lethargic, and so it was hard for me to work. You know, I was having so many issues with my health and I really didn't understand it, and I had to take a long break from my modeling, which was my main source of income at the time, and it was something that I expressed made me sad, right? And he would use it against me in arguments like, you're so fucking lazy, you have no ambition, and like, which wasn't true, but since it was something that I was already feeling, you know, deeply and like sad about, it just kind of affirmed what was already hurting me inside. And it was also hurtful because according to him, he used to tell me how he's always had to financially provide for either family or ex-girlfriend. I felt like I couldn't relax. Like, if I wasn't constantly working or doing anything, like, I felt really bad because he's used to basically taking care of everyone. For a while, I didn't argue back with him because I used to be really, really big on not speaking out of turn to people that I care about. I didn't say hurtful things to, I wouldn't say hurtful things to anyone, but especially if I cared about you, it didn't matter what you said to me, I wasn't going to speak out of turn to you. I was really big on that. And I remember there was a moment after we had one of those arguments where he was just kind of laying it into me, where I was in the bathtub and I was just crying. And he had came, after he calmed down, he came to the bathroom and sat there and started apologizing, and I told him, I was like, please don't do that anymore because you're taking me to a very dark place. Every time he would say the things that he said, anytime he would be hurtful, anytime he'd scream, yell at me, it was really taking me to a very, very, very dark place. Eventually it got to a point where he had did it so much that I did start to argue back. You know, like, I would give it right back to him. Outside of the relationship itself, there was another red flag, which he was someone who was quick to anger, which I became very quickly aware of. You know, after that first interaction where he got mad at me for not staying at his hotel, there was just other little things where he just kind of moved through life just in a very entitled, rude way. One prominent moment with this where his anger became very, very apparent to me and almost scary was when it was in November of, I believe, 2022, and he was celebrating his birthday with another friend whose birthday is also in November. We went to Catch, New York. And so anyways, we ended up being escorted out because he started to scream and yell at the manager in the restaurant, calling her a stupid bitch and lunging at her, right? And so the security had to escort us out. As the security is escorting us out, he's still like lunging at her, screaming, calling her a stupid bitch, like, as we're being escorted out of the restaurant. So then we get out of the restaurant and we're leaving, we're crossing the street, and people start throwing ice cubes at us from the window because he made such a fool of himself and all of us. And when I think one of his friends had pointed out that the ice cubes were being thrown out the window, and I was like, oh my God, no. And when he said what, and he ran back, tried to run back into the restaurant, the security stopped him, and then he proceeded to try to fight the security, which then two of his friends, I had to like beg and scream to get two of his friends to hold him back and like move him as far away from the restaurant as possible because he was trying to fight with the security guard for about, I want to say, 10 minutes. It was just like so intense. It was a lot. His friends were fed up. I was fed up. You know, I had called his dad, or I had texted his dad and let him know what had happened, and I also expressed my concern to him. and told him that that just wasn't okay. And whenever I would do that, whenever I would express my concern or just tell him, like, you know, that's not cool, he would be mad at me. So for this particular one, I believe he was mad at me for 2 days. It was a very confusing time for me. People always ask why I stay, and it's because when it was good, it was good, and when it was bad, it was bad. It went from one extreme to the other. But for me, what I did is I really held on to that person that I grew to love in the beginning of our relationship, who was kind and communicative and intentional and just so sweet and generous. And like, you know, it was just like, if he's been that person before, he can surely get back to that. That was the main thing that he would often say is, I'm going to get back to that person that you knew. So I was constantly holding on to that hope. I had a folder on IG, which I believe I still have it, but it was all kinds of different things and different ways that we could implement healthy practices into our relationship. So I created the check-ins. We did weekly check-ins, though they really didn't do much because, you know, I would ask him questions and I'd check in with him, and he'd just give me like short, cold answers. Like, they weren't engaging, and he wouldn't ever ask me about myself. So it was like, they really didn't do much. But I was literally trying everything to just create a harmonious, healthy relationship between the two of us. And also trying to help him grow as a person, which now I would never do, you know, in retrospect. These same practices that I would implement in our relationship were sort of used to lure me back whenever he would apologize. So he would apologize, beg for me back, and then he'd be like, you know, maybe we can implement more check-ins. Like, the check-ins really help me. All of a sudden, the check-ins really help me. And like, maybe we can do twice a week, or, you know, just like increase them basically. And so I'm like, okay, and I would just try harder to no avail. I want to talk about smear campaigns. And the reason why I'm speaking about smear campaigns so early into this is because I didn't realize until now that it started way before I even realized it was happening. So a common thing that I noticed is he would take these practices and he would use them to brag online as if it was a common practice for himself. Or he'd take things I say and he'd reuse it for his online persona without ever giving me credit, when the reality was just so different. And I really want to highlight this because it wasn't until recently, like 2 years after me leaving, that I realized that he was trying to get ahead of things and build narratives online to soften the blow for himself, and also to paint untrue narratives about me to his audience, to his family, to his friends. So now we're going to get into the physical abuse. I don't know if I'm going to go thoroughly into detail, but I will give you guys enough of the screenshots, the evidence, etc., to kind of paint a picture of these physical instances that occurred when I was pregnant. I'm talking on the phone with my cousins, and I was telling them about a conversation that had happened when he came to visit me in Miami at my apartment, where he said that he was smarter than me. And it became an argument because I told him that smart people wouldn't just randomly say that they're smarter than someone else. And that empathy to me was a good indication of intelligence, which is something that he severely lacks. So after me saying that, that's what led into him being upset and the argument, etc. So I was telling my cousins about this situation, and he overheard me on the phone. That's when we got into an argument because he was upset that I told my cousins that he said he was smarter than me. And this is when he started to yell in my face, which isn't the first time he's done this. However, this was the first time where he was also bumping my chest and screaming at me as he did it, until he bumped me into the TV and I fell back into the TV. I was crying and he stormed out of the apartment. I was really, I think, shocked, sad, scared. I did call my cousin after I texted her, and she was just telling me how scared she was and that his behavior has been concerning to her for a while. I didn't know what to do at that moment in time because we were now living together. So his mom alerted me that he had a history of treating his girlfriends very disrespectfully. A lot of what she described to me from his last relationship really went together hand in hand. It was like the same thing. But there was one particular thing that really stuck out to me where I knew that I needed to leave that relationship. And it was when his mom had said that he had a history of domestic violence in college, which he got out of. I just said I didn't want to fuck around and find out. I didn't want to be the next one to be getting my ass beat, right? So collectively, his mom, his dad's girlfriend, my cousin, my modeling agent, and a mutual friend of ours, his fiance girlfriend, they all knew I was gonna leave. We all devised a plan where I was gonna leave, but he had no idea I was gonna leave because his dad's girlfriend really emphasized to me that I needed to be safe with my decision and to leave when he wasn't aware. So after I decided that I was gonna leave him, I took my trip to California to see some family because I just could not stay in that apartment. It was just so uncomfortable for me.
I'm his mama. Trust me, I pick up on it. The lack of eye contact, fumbling over things, and just not really having an executed plan of conversation, but just throwing things together. I did hear a little bit of you from where I stopped at this point. Was him getting dressed to go to the gym. But when he said the part about checking in, I know that it is a part of the remedy that you both share, that you bring to the table to do your check-ins and everything. You don't have to worry about what's going to the internet, about the relationship or the breakup of it. True enough, he did not mention anything about, he's not going to do that about you, because what it would do is shine light back on him, because he would have to be the one to really talk about how he needs to find his rhythm of inner work on working on himself and his anger management and the things that he would have to say if he's going to be honest and transparent. Um, but he has not been the type, let me say that, to put anything on the internet in that perspective as far as relationship, because he has painted this picture with you and him, knowing that internally in-house it is not what you portray, on that you show the lovey-dovey stuff, but you don't show the times that you get upset. And so if he's going to heal, he's going to have to face himself, not play the blind game and not blame it on anybody else. You don't focus on the 1,000 people or 600,000 people, because at the end of the day, it is truly about you being, free, whole, and in a good place, okay? It needs therapy. And just because you can get behind that camera and give daily routines, if we focus more on people's demeanor, facial expressions, eyes, and those things, and we could tell that something was off. So it's gonna be a very lonely person. You can tell the difference when you're there on video with him with some things versus him now back in that place of solitude to himself. That's not a good place, but that's not your concern. It's for you to be okay. And he's got to face him. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about none of that social media stuff. Don't worry about anything being on the internet. Cause you got a voice too, whether you're following base is what it is. Trust me, when a woman begins to express herself, it could do more damage to him as well if he got out there that he was this person that was indirectly verbally abusive and could be a little hot tub tempered. Trust me, he doesn't want that flag. So he's not going to do anything that's going to cause it to be presented to his following base. Continue to voice how you feel. Let that be your freedom. And you continue to move forward. Fear is not a place that resides with you. Doubt, any of that. You just keep being who you are, because like you said, you've put in the work and you've done it for yourself. Let nobody or anyone take you back to a relapse place. You continue on this lead, move forward, okay?
I can't remember how many days that I stayed in California to see family. I think it was just a few days, but I had bought my ticket to leave. I believe it was the next day that I had returned to Jersey that we had gotten into it. We mutually agreed via text to end our relationship. While this conversation is happening, I'm on the phone with my friend, right? And so I'm thinking like, I texted him too, like, cool, I'm gonna pack my bags today. I'm gonna go get some boxes. I'll be gone, right? I'm thinking I have a clear out. He texted me telling me to answer the phone, but I didn't want to answer the phone because I was already on the phone with my friend. And also I didn't like speaking to him when he was just very hostile. And so after he had texted that, he was like, it's okay, I'll handle it. And I didn't think anything of that text message. I'm just on my way. I'm walking to the USPS store in Weehawken. I mean, not in Weehawken, in Hoboken. And I get some boxes. And I come back to the apartment still on the phone with my friend. And I just start packing my things. I'm not doing it quickly or in a rush or anything like that because he was headed to boxing. He's supposed to be at boxing. He's supposed to be working out. So I'm just, you know, packing my things and packing my suitcase, etc. And that's when I hear the door open. So he had turned around and came back home after I told him that I was gonna leave. When he does this, he comes back into the apartment and he starts grabbing my suitcase and trying to rip my sling bag off of my chest. And my friend is still on the phone. So we're struggling for my suitcase as he's trying to throw my suitcase out of the apartment. And I'm telling him, stop doing that, stop doing that, stop doing that. He eventually let my suitcase go, and that's when he went and grabbed my laptop. I believe it was on the couch in the living room. And I had threw my phone on the couch in the living room and asked him to please, like, allow me, if you're gonna take my laptop, please allow me to just delete my things out of my laptop. Like, basically restart it if you're gonna take it. And so my friend is still on the phone on the couch. He takes the laptop. There was like a closet inside the bathroom in his apartment in Jersey, and he puts it at the top. And I'm standing in the doorway. It's like kind of closed, so you have to kind of close the door to open that door. And I'm standing in the doorway, like telling him, please just allow me to delete my things out of the laptop. And he opens the door and he shoves me. And I'm only 120 pounds. At the time, I was only 117 pounds. So I slid across the floor, and I had burn marks. My friend had heard all of this. After he pushes me, he rushes into the living room. When he rushes into the living room, he hangs up on my friend and he threatens to throw my phone out of the window. At this point, I'm like begging him not to throw my phone out of the window. So he doesn't end up doing it. After he hung up on my friend, I had no idea. She ended up calling the police. And so after he didn't throw my phone out of the window, I kind of just rushed back into the room and I just started packing my things. And that's when he kind of like, he wasn't angry anymore. He was just like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, he's like, he basically was, he started begging me to stay. And then he was like, why do I have to handle situations like this while holding my phone? And he throws my phone at the ground as hard as possible and it shatters. This is my phone. But yeah, he threw it on the ground and it shattered. He, at this point, is like calmly like kneeling in front of me as I'm packing my things, because he's like, are you gonna leave? And I'm like, yeah, I'm leaving. Like, I'm not staying here. He calls my friend back, and my friend is like, he's in the kitchen talking to her, and she's like, where's Taja? And he's like, she's okay, she's okay. And I'm like yelling like, get off of my phone, get off my phone, hang up my phone. So he hangs it up. And that's when, right after that, the police knock on the door. When he opens the door, they see me in the back. I'm crying, I'm bawling my damn eyes out. They really wanted to make sure that I never dealt with him ever again. They're like trying to convince me to get a restraining order on him. The cops had called me a few more times on my cell phone because they arrested him, and they were really trying to make sure that I was not gonna go back with him. So after this situation, after they arrested him, I quickly modified my plane ticket. I finished packing my things and I went to the airport. When I was at the airport, my stepmom let me know that I had to tell my dad. So while I'm in the airport, I'm like trying not to cry, and I call my dad and I tell him what happened. And he was he just was so short. It was kind of scary. So this is when I want to get into the conversation of enablers, flying monkeys. At the time, I wasn't fully aware of what his family was doing. You know, his mother was texting me, expressing her love for me, checking on me. So she was really trying to encourage me to stop my dad from talking about the issue or reacting any further to what had happened to me. Her messages to me were making me feel as if my family and I were in the wrong for either feeling angry. It was like I was wrong for feeling any kind of negative emotion that would be associated with just being physically assaulted by her son. So I did text my dad and ask him to calm down because I was having panic attacks on the airplane. So he listened to me just out of respect for me and how I was feeling. He did text me, he did contact me, he sent me an email, he sent me a text message. And I eventually responded. I think it was like the next day. After I had responded, he posted like a statement to his Instagram. And then the statement was sent to me. And that made me react because I'm like, you're just acting like you weren't just arrested for putting your hands on me. So I posted a comment and I said exactly what had happened in the comments. And when I did that, his family started to attack me. This was the first time that he had posted false and defamatory statements about me on his large platform, because he took a screenshot of my comment and then he posted it on his story, a video story of him, where he was saying that we were mutually hitting each other, like we were mutually abusing each other, which was not true. When I seen the story, I reacted to this in such a way. I messaged him, I responded to the story. He basically said he'll clear it up eventually. Did he ever do that? No. And now, after having a baby and like having gone through that relationship and leaving, I have finally learned that he was actually going around telling people that we were mutually hitting each other. So these lies were being spread about me and our relationship, and I had no clue. So he ended up calling me from one of his many fake numbers. He has so many fake numbers. He said that his mom was lying about the situation with him having domestic violence. And I was hesitant to believe either of him or his mother, because he had just assaulted me. His sister just attacked me after just texting my phone apologizing on behalf of her brother literally the day before. After we had that conversation, I found out I was pregnant, I think 2 days later. If you follow me for a while, you know that I struggle with PCOS, and I've always wanted to be a mom. I've always said that I felt that I was born to be a mother, and I knew that I wanted to have kids eventually, and I was actually very scared that I wouldn't be able to have kids if I didn't go through with this pregnancy. You know, I was thinking that, you know, who knows if it would be my one and only opportunity to have a child. I always wanted to be married and in my 30s before I had kids. It was all very unfortunate to me, but it's a decision that I would never change despite what followed after and the fact that I still have to continue to deal with this person whenever they choose to drop in and be a parent. So after finding out I was pregnant, I continued to stay at my friend's house for, I want to say, maybe a week or so after that. And during this time, he was very, very, very charming. He conveniently got into religion and was reading scripture every morning with one of his friends who is very religious and has very strong faith in God. And, you know, he was seeing the therapist that I had found for him, and it was just like he was very kind and like very gentle. He just was exuding such a different energy. And although everyone was telling me like, Taja, it's not gonna change, it just gets worse, I really believed it. I believed that he would change, and I believed that he would prove everyone wrong. And that was one thing that I used to say is like, you know, let him prove you wrong. Let him prove you wrong. And so I had faith in his ability to change. Truly, I genuinely thought he would. So eventually I did end up moving back in with him since now we're having a child. And when I moved back in, he was going to court because he was facing up to 6 months in jail for, you know, putting his hands on me, physically assaulting me. And I didn't show up. I didn't show up because I didn't want him to go to jail. I was so scared to be having a child, the thought of like having to take care of a baby on my own, and you know, and I also felt so bad. I felt bad despite being physically assaulted. I was the one who felt bad that he was arrested for his actions. At this time, he was dealing with 2 different court proceedings. It was one for him physically assaulting me, and the other one was for him punching a man in the face in Hoboken County. Sometimes I do wish I would have did what the cops had begged me to do, which was show up, send his ass to jail for 6 months, get my restraining order, because I ended up taking care of a baby on my own anyways. You know, like, it just got exceedingly worse, just like how everybody said. So sometimes I wish that I could go back and change that, but it just is what it is. They would continue to have arguments because his mom, his sisters would be in a group chat basically saying things like, oh, she's trying to turn you against us. This is what he's telling me. They're saying, she's trying to turn you against us, and you know, like all of that. Basically painting me out to be a bad person. And considering the fact that when we were together, he didn't have a good relationship with his mom. And I was the one who always wanted to invite his mom places, who always encouraged him to invite his mom on her birthday. Like, can we get her flowers on Mother's Day? Can we get her flowers? You know, so it was just like very, very confusing that all of a sudden I turned into this horrid individual. We would get into arguments over this because he would never defend me. Despite him knowing that it wasn't true, he would never defend me. So I'd be like, why aren't you telling them that that's not true? Why are you not defending me in this sense? Or people would be online saying that I trapped him with a baby and like calling me a gold digger and all of the above, and he would never come to my defense, ever. And it didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to me until now. I moved to LA in October of 2023, and that is where the 3rd physical assault happened. And while we were there, if we were getting into arguments, he would say things to me like he was gonna take the baby from me, I would never see her, and things like that. So there was an instance where I had called a mutual friend of ours, his girlfriend, and you know, I was telling her that I was worried. I was telling her what he had said to me about wanting to take the baby away and how I would never see her again, and that I was scared and that I wanted to leave and I wasn't sure what to do. And you know, like, she had offered to like take me to Joshua Tree and stuff like that, but eventually, like, him and them ended up not being friends, and so she wasn't around anymore. And a few days later, that's when the physical assault occurred. We went to our first baby appointment in Pasadena. I was 7 months pregnant. As we were coming back out, he went to go pay for parking, and I'm standing next to him, and the ticket gets stuck. So he pressed the button, and as he's talking to the dude, like, the guy just, like, the voice disappeared, and then the machine ate it up. Either way, he was livid, right? And he kept trying to press the button, press the button, press the button. And I told him, I'm like, you know what, like, let's just go, because they'll help us at the front anyways. Like, you know, there was a long line. And so he stormed off. When he's storming off, I'm just walking to the car behind him, and he opens my door. I get in the car, and I'm just quiet. We're leaving the parking garage, and he presses the button, and what do you know, like, immediately they let us out. I asked him, I'm like, do you want to talk about it? And he said that I was being dismissive of his feelings at the ticket machine. And I said that I was sorry, but now that I'm about to be 8 months pregnant, I didn't like dealing with stress or anger or anything like that. And whenever he got angry, it made me very, very stressed out. And getting that late into the pregnancy, I wanted to control, I wanted to be as, like, calm as possible. After I explained that, he told me I was still being dismissive, and he said he was gonna drop my ass off back at the apartment. I had a feeling he was cheating on me, so I said, okay, who are you going to go see? And that's when he lost it. He started calling me a bitch, telling me, yeah, he's done with my ass. I can take care of this baby on my own, to go ahead and fucking leave, have my family help me take care of the baby. Like, he just kept going. I was just like, yeah. I'm like, here you go, per usual, disrespecting me, calling me out of my name. He's like, yeah, shut the fuck up, you know. He just kept going. I asked him to please pull over so I can get an Uber and head home so I could pack my things and leave, and he was not letting me out of the car. We get onto the freeway, we're still arguing. He hits me in my head, and in shock, I'm like, did you just hit me in my head? He hit me in my head again. At this point, I'm crying because I already feel so embarrassed because he just hit me. Like, it's not a push, it's not him screaming. He hit me. He hit me in my head twice. After he hits me in my head the second time, he starts speeding, saying he's gonna kill us both in the car. So I'm scared at this point. We exit the freeway. There's this light right before you go into the parking garage. So we're at that light a little bit far back, like by the alleyway where the urgent care is at, and then the Thea Metropolis is on the other side of us. So I hop out of the car, but the car was still slowly rolling, and so I fell onto my back. Really, like, people in the urgent care run to the windows. He parks his car in the alleyway, and he starts walking super fast to get in front of me. And he's like, get back in the car, get back in the car. I told him, no, I'm not gonna get back in the car. You just hit me in my head. This interaction kept happening. I turn around to walk away from him. He's still following me. At this point, a lady in a white BMW, like, kind of pulled up, and she looked to be on the phone, which I didn't even notice. He had said it. He said she's calling the cops. I told him, I'm like, well, you better get in the car then before the cops come. So he runs to his car, he drives off, and I start walking as fast as possible to get to the Subway in downtown, where I purchased a large drink. So I just sat there for, I don't even know how many hours, maybe 3 hours, and drank an iced tea, a large iced tea, as I sat in the Subway. And while I was sitting in there, I felt so many things. I felt lonely, I felt confused, I felt stupid, because we were about to have our baby shower. There were tons of people who were going to be flying in, and, you know, I had spent all of this time trying to rebuild his image to my family, to my friends, and telling them that he was going to prove them wrong. And so this situation was definitely very defeating for me. And although I have the community, I have people I could have called, I didn't. I was too embarrassed. I felt like I needed to just commit to what I had already committed to. I eventually ended up walking back to the apartment, where he was sitting on the balcony, like, and his knees up, like, kind of like looking distraught on the balcony. And I didn't even say anything. I went into the room and I just fell asleep. And after that, I had purchased a hotel for that night and left. And this was one of a few times that I had stayed in a hotel during my pregnancy while we lived in LA. So after that situation, I put on a brave face because our baby shower was coming up. His birthday was just a couple days prior to the shower. So, you know, I baked him a cake, I bought him some presents, a massage, just trying to make the energy better in the apartment. Prior to people flying in and coming to see us for this baby shower. As far as the conversations that we had after that situation, he didn't seem to have much remorse. As a matter of fact, the argument that we were having was about my dad. He hated my dad because my dad called him a bitch, because my dad says bitches hit women. He never got over that. So I had went from speaking to my dad on a daily basis to constantly getting into it with my dad, barely talking to my dad while I was pregnant, because my dad was like, what's going on with you? Like, you know, I'm such a very bubbly individual, very family oriented. I'm missing family events or leaving earlier. Just like, I wasn't being myself, and my dad had a lot of questions, and there was just so much that I was going through that he had no idea about, right? And so I had let him know, like, you know, I just jumped out of the car in fear of my life because you hit me. And he was like, you weren't scared, shut up. You know, like, I was also expressing that now my dad has no clue what's happening to me, and he's about to come to this baby shower and try his best to interact with you and not knowing that his daughter is still being abused. So those were the conversations that were being had that kind of let me know that it wasn't really a big deal to him what he had did, and he kind of just wanted me to move on from it and get over it. So you guys know how I told you I had a feeling that he was cheating on me. In January, I had found out that he was cheating on me like 2 to 3 times a week with escorts, and he would literally purchase an Uber to Uber them to the hotels that we could see from our apartment. Like, we live 48 floors up, so it was the hotel, I think Indigo, and the Intercontinental Los Angeles that he was Ubering these escorts to have sex with them multiple times a week. And he was paying them anywhere between 400 to 600, I don't even, maybe even more, but those were the 2 numbers that I seen quite often, to have sex with them. When I finally found the physical proof, I woke him up, I showed him, and I started to pack my things, and he started to panic. While he's panicking, I'm telling him, like, you're so selfish. Like, you could have caused irreversible harm to not only myself, but to our unborn child, like, before she even begins her life. You know, like, it's such a big deal. You're putting the both of us in danger with your selfish decisions. As I'm packing my things in the closet, he's panicking and he yells out, Taja, I have a sex addiction. I said I didn't care and that I was leaving him and going to a hotel. At first he wouldn't let me leave, but then he ended up getting a hotel for me and I stayed there. Now we're gonna go back to him getting ahead of things on social media. So while I'm staying in this hotel, he makes a YouTube video, right? And he's telling everyone that he has a sex addiction. And I can't remember whether or not he also talked about the therapist that he was seeing for sex addiction. He was attending these therapy sessions while also doing research on sex addiction. I just want to emphasize that I didn't hear much about these therapy sessions anymore after his therapist wanted to talk about mood and personality disorders. Also want to emphasize that if he did in fact have a sex addiction, it would involve very, very intense therapy that he would most likely be in for the rest of his life or for a very long time. You don't just get over a sex addiction. You don't just get over an addiction like that. It quite literally consumes your entire life. So now we're getting into physical assault number 4. So I was looking back at these screenshots and these messages, and I noticed that every single one of these escorts, because you can look up the numbers and see the ad for the escort, the specific escort, had different extremities than me. Every single one of them. I looked up the number for one of the conversations he was having with the last escort he had sex with prior to me finding the messages the next day. And it was the same person. It was an ad for the same person, same number. The ad said milk me, which is something that they repeatedly said to each other in these messages. before they met up and had sex. I went upstairs, he was in the shower with the shower door open, and I was questioning him about what I had saw, and he was basically telling me that what I was seeing wasn't, my eyes were deceiving me, right? He's like, no, that's a fake ad. And I'm like, well, this is the same person and the ad says milk me and this is the same number. Like, too many coincidences, you know? And whenever I look all these other people up, they have these same extremities as this person. And he was telling me that no. As I was going to walk out of the bathroom, I closed the shower door shut because he was showering with the shower door open and the water was getting everywhere. I walk out of the bathroom and he pushes me. He pushes me and I fall onto the side of my stomach. I didn't know he was coming. He pushed me. I didn't even hear him coming. So I completely fell onto the side of my stomach. I was 2 weeks away from giving birth. When I got up, he then hit me in my face. He hit me in my face again, twice again, he hit me in my face. I tried to fight back by grabbing the mirror off the wall, but he caught my hands before I could even do anything with it. I was heavily pregnant. When I tried to go get my phone, he pushed me up against the window and was struggling with me for my cell phone. He took my phone, he went into the closet, he grabbed my laptop computer, and as he was leaving the room while he was in the doorway, he threw my phone down, I believe 3 times, until it completely shattered. And it shattered. This was the first situation that I defended myself physically from him. After breaking my phone, he logged into my iCloud, he deleted my passport, he changed my password, and he deleted everything out of my phone. I was able to call my cousin on this phone, my first broken phone, because he had my other one, and I had tried calling her for a little while. It was not connecting, it wasn't connecting. He locked me onto the balcony and I was finally able to connect with her through FaceTime audio, and I was so frantic. I had told her how he had pushed me and he hit me and that I defended myself, and you know, she had asked if I should, you know, call my dad, if I should call my grandpa. I didn't want to call any of those people, so I didn't. When I got back inside, he told me that he told me he was going to use the pictures and that I was never going to see my daughter. I was never going to see my daughter, and that he was going to drain my family and I of all of our money and to get our credit cards ready. I think back on that situation quite often because I went from being someone who didn't even speak out of turn to the people I cared about to now being pushed to a point where I had to defend myself, and it was just so unlike me. And yeah, even though I was very right in defending myself, I still felt so fucking bad. I felt so bad for reacting, for doing it. Like, I put myself in a position for him to use my defense of myself against me. So don't want to get into it, but eventually those photos that he took were the photos that he used when filing for his retaliatory restraining order against me after I had filed mine, to then say that I was abusing him. So he deleted my iCloud. He deleted everything out of my iCloud. And yeah, my family came and picked me up. Through my phone, so I was texting them from my Y-mail, my email that's attached to my iPhone, and my family came and picked me up the next day, and at this time he was apologizing, but also it was kind of turning into like a trauma dump kind of thing where he's also talking about how his family just doesn't show up for him, like his grandpa, and like how his mom, and like, you know, things like that, and how it's affected him and stuff. So we were having like a deep conversation about his traumas after that situation. I couldn't even log into my iCloud account because the password was changed and I had nothing. Any proof, any photos that I had taken of injuries or anything like that, gone. Here he even admitted to pushing me down and hitting me twice. In this conversation, I said that I felt bad for defending myself. And he uses that snippet of the conversation where I'm saying I feel bad in his retaliatory restraining order, and to just show people, you know, like, oh, she was abusive to me, and here's these photos, and here's where she says she feels bad for hitting me back. So at this time, my cousins, my mom, they're literally trying to encourage me to give birth here in Sacramento. They're saying that they're really worried for my baby and I, that they love us both and they just want us to be safe, and that I just need to heal somewhere where I can be safe and give birth somewhere where I can be safe, which in retrospect, they were very right. But every single day he was texting me, expressing how sad he was and how he didn't want to miss the birth of our child. And it was just making me feel bad because I have this fear of using children as pawns, right? So regardless of what was happening to me, I didn't want to take away his ability to be a present or good father if that's what he wanted to be. Eventually, I made up my mind to go back to LA. I was supposed to give birth and stay in a different apartment with our daughter, but that ended up not working out that way. So I went back to the apartment in LA with him, and we just got the room and stuff ready for our child's arrival. I had found a couples therapist back in, I believe, December, so prior to me finding the escort stuff. And when I found the escort stuff, I had no desire to even do the couples therapy because I was done. I'm like, I am so, like, officially, out of all the times I've been done with this relationship, I am done. And so finally, since I was moving back, I decided to reach out to the couples therapist, because if we were going to be living under the same roof, we needed to be able to communicate. I was really hoping that a third party person would be able to hear what I was saying and be able to accurately convey it to him in a way that was easily digestible. I did try to force myself to make the relationship portion of it all work for a few days, but ultimately I did decide to leave because I also found more cheating messages, and it was just like, I can't continue to do this. His reaction, just everything. We mutually decided that I should go, so I left. And after I left, that's when he threatened to kill me and my family and drive up to Sacramento and pull up on everybody he needed to pull up on, and that he had all the addresses he needed. He was just threatening me. And despite me begging him to please stop, and it was making me anxious, because let's not forget, like, I was 10 or 11 days postpartum. So I want to talk about post-separation abuse because that's been a big part of my journey ever since I left. And honestly, it felt a lot worse than the physical abuse because it was just so persistent and it was so overwhelming and all-consuming. And I don't know if it just felt that way because I also just had a child, but I am very grateful to my mother and my family, but especially my mother, because she helped me get out of that day. And also, my body started to physically manifest the stress, the anxiety, the trauma, everything that I was feeling. And I was dizzy every single fucking day. Like every single day I'm mentioning to people that I'm dizzy. I'm so dizzy every day, to the point where sometimes I couldn't even stand up and hold my child, or my mom would go ahead and take a shift where she was taking care of my child for me so that I could rest. And it was like no matter what I did, I would go and see a doctor, I would try to eat, I would do anything I could, and it just, the dizziness would not subside. We would constantly get into it after I left because he would try to make me feel bad for leaving, saying that I kidnapped our daughter, even though I let him know, like, you can come and see her anytime. I just need to get away from this. I need to get away from you. I don't need to be in this relationship anymore. It is so unhealthy. It's so toxic. It's so abusive. And that his emotions and his anger and just him in general, he's just such a volatile individual, just so unhealthy, unsafe. Just gonna quickly go through these things. There were 2 instances where I had to call for a wellness check. One where his dad made the call, but his dad had called me prior to making the wellness check call, and I ended up getting sick that night. The next day I couldn't take care of our daughter because I was so sick. I was so stressed out. I was so sick from that first wellness call. The second wellness call, he actually did it while we were on the phone, and it was, I believe, maybe like the 4th time I had told him, texted him and told him that I did not want to be with him. And so we had gotten into it. When I told him to start being honest with people and to start being accountable, that's when he was on the phone saying, let's do it together. He's crying and laughing at the same time, saying, let's do it together, Taja, let's do it together. And at first I didn't know what he was talking about until he hung from the balcony of the 48th floor. Let me emphasize this. 48 floors up, he's hanging from the balcony with me on FaceTime. And he pretended to kill himself. He dropped his phone, it fell upside down, and all I could hear was wind. I'm frantic. I tried calling his dad, I'm texting his dad. I think I tried calling the police. The police, I got to the Sacramento jurisdiction and then I couldn't reach the specific number for them. So then I had called a mutual friend of ours who had left their apartment. I think they got to the apartment in LA in 7 minutes. Went up there, and when they opened the door for him, he said that the phone was still sitting upside down on the balcony and the balcony door was open. And so that's when he checked all the other rooms, closets, everything, bathrooms in the house, and he wasn't there. And so I told him, like, that'd be very unfair for him to see something like that. So I asked him to please call the cops. The cops came, they checked every single platform that his body could have landed on. If he did in fact jump, which we thought he jumped because the phone and everything was still there. Just for the cops a few hours to send me a video of him hopping on the elevator and leaving.
That's 7:44.
After this, he would constantly, whenever we got into it, if he wasn't getting what he wanted, or say when he's asking for me to get back with him and I'm telling him no, he would always threaten to kill himself. Oh, when I kill myself, it'll be your fault, and things like that. It was just like, now he was using that against me anytime he did not get what he wanted. Anytime he didn't get what he wanted. And so that had a lot to do with our last conversation too. I'm just gonna get into the smear campaign portion of it all, that mainly online that I started to occur after I filed for my restraining order. And this is a continuation of what I was talking about with the post-separation abuse. And basically what it is the ways in which your abuser will continue to try to exert like harm, fear, or whatever punishment they deem fit for you, you know, harassment, after you leave the relationship. And I want to say that for me, it has been one of the most damaging parts of this entire experience. The most damaging way that he used his influence to spread lies about my family and I has been through the baby's likeness. So he has posted an account completely lying about me keeping the child away from him, stories where he's also going on tangents about completely false occurrences, referring to our living situation as saying that our child was living in the trenches, just a multitude of lies that could be easily disproved. And we cannot forget that very, very long YouTube video where he used our child's likeness to then finish it up by telling very detrimental, harmful, hurtful lies about my father and I. He has constantly texted and harassed my family on holidays. Talked about me in his YouTube comments, as well as said like little comments and blows in his Instagram comment. At first, it was very hard for me to hide my reactions to these things because my family and I were being lied on to such a severe and disgusting degree. Most recent, actually, like about a month ago, was a text to my mom from a fake number about something that I had posted on Threads, which wasn't even about this person, but a TikTok conversation that I had seen, and I just posted my thoughts about it. However, like, this is what I mean, like just constantly harassing my family through fake numbers. He stole my money from my campaigns because he used to represent me. I still have not seen that money. I probably will never see that money. It was a very difficult time for me because while I was going through all this, I was also being dragged in and out of court for correcting his falsehoods online. And my reactions actually, for some, fueled the fire of like this bitter baby mama narrative, even though that's exactly how he was able to make my life a living hell, is because of the fact that I wanted to have such a harmonious co-parenting relationship with this person and make it very easy for him to be a parent to our child. But in reality, it was just making my life a living hell. He did everything he could to exert his power over me while we had our conflicting restraining orders and we're in that process. And the reality of it is that whenever I did say something, it was almost always in response to disrespect or harassment or anything that was being said about my family or done to my family. And it was really hard for me to become okay with not correcting people about things that were not true about me. It's definitely easier said than done, especially when this person seems to have made it their life goal to make your life a living hell. It's just like, yeah. I really am taking a big risk by putting this out there and allowing strangers to make opinions about me, judge me, say real things, you know, allow my experiences to be ridiculed by people who haven't experienced it or have no knowledge of how these situations go. But it's because I do think that it's important and that it will help people. And not only that, I think I am coming to a place where I'm finally starting to feel at peace with having strangers scrutinize me and my experiences, because Yeah, people have done it so many times throughout this process, and I think I have gotten through the initial hurt that I first felt after watching people laugh and make jokes about my very real experiences. Recently, I've dealt with so much of being judged by individuals because of their preconceived thoughts of me or the fact that I'm a woman. I've experienced people mock me, laugh at me, call me a liar, call me a bitter bitch, a bitter baby mama. And I think I've definitely gotten to the point now where I'm okay with not being liked by horrible people, and that I would just rather lean further into experiencing community. I'd rather help and connect with other people than to hide from the wrath of ignorant and cruel individuals. I also want to emphasize that I do know that these are, to an extent, this is something that I allow by ignoring red flags. It's something that I'm already very hard on myself about. I judge myself probably more than anyone else, and with that being said, I do appreciate those of you who constantly just extend beautiful messages of encouragement to me throughout this process, and who will continue to do so. It doesn't go unnoticed. Anyways, love you guys.